Hey, it's Tess, content creator, model, presenter, and host of the Tess Talks podcast, on a mission to ignite curiosity. Holy smokes, this episode is insane. So I sat down with my friend David the Medium, who you would probably know as Australia's favourite medium and psychic clairvoyant. I'm not kidding when I say I still have goosebumps from this conversation. We went really deep really quickly and delved into some really profound topics such as channeling to the other side, soul contracts, past lives. But we also delved into David's journey from the corporate world to a spiritual path, which I found both really inspiring and enlightening. And I really love how David passionately believes that each of us has this innate ability to connect with the other side, and he elaborates on how we can actually do this. But honestly, make sure you stay tuned until the end, because David agreed to perform one of my very first personal psychic readings. Let's just say it's jaw-dropping and emotional, and it actually got so personal and went for such a long time that I had to cut it down to get it all packed into this one episode. So it's one of those things that I think you really have to hear to believe it. So let's get curious. David, thanks so much for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited, Tess.
I'm so excited. I'm actually really excited to be able to sit down with you one-on-one, because we met probably a few years ago at our friend's wedding in Lake Como, which was amazing. And I feel like we just gelled so quickly, and we have had the most hilarious banter and chats on Instagram, DMs, over all your close friend stories and all that, which we might get into, maybe not.
No, let's get into it. Nothing's off limits today.
Yay, I love that. But we've never really caught up one-on-one.
And had like a real
D&M
kind of chat.
Yeah.
Which I feel like we're doing today.
Yeah.
Let's get deep into it.
I'm so fascinated in your story.
Love this.
You blow my mind. I've listened to a few podcasts about you, and your story is definitely a really fascinating one. And I've had a lot of friends who have come to see you, and hearing some of their experiences have blown my mind, given me absolute chills and goosebumps. And I've always wanted to come see you myself for a reading as well. But it's so funny because I haven't had a lot of like close death in my life.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of thought, you know, if I came to see you, would there be anyone to come through? Would there be anyone to send messages? And so I haven't yet seen you. So maybe if you're up for it, at the end of the episode,
Absolutely.
we could do a little reading.
And you make a really good point there as well, because I do have a lot of people that message me, or they do want to book in, but they're like, oh, I don't really have anyone close to me that has crossed over.
Yeah.
But everyone's got someone, and we're all part of like an ancestral sort of soul line. So even if there's no one that you're particularly necessarily close to in terms of your family or friends, you'll always still have guides coming forward for you. So they are sort of not like your ancient relatives, but everyone's got wider family circles. So there's definitely people out there looking after you.
That's what I've really wondered. So if you found people who've come to see you who maybe are in a similar boat to me, they still get as much out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm like an intuitive psychic as well. So even if I'm not necessarily talking to people, I'll still get downloads from the spirit that will still help guide you and direct you into any topic or anything in life that you want to talk about as well.
Gotcha. So so I feel like we should explain this a little bit to the listeners.
I know, everyone's like, who is this guy? Wait, Tess,
who is
he?
this person? A bit of a backstory. Okay, so you describe yourself as a psychic clairvoyant and spiritual medium.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
So essentially, I have the ability to communicate with those that have crossed over. So, and when I say crossed over, it's those that, the way that we'd word it is died, essentially.
Yeah.
A physical death. And I have the ability to connect with them. So they will be your loved ones, your family, your friends, people that you are connected to and people that you know. And I am also a psychic, which means that I can foresee and predict future timelines. So essentially being able to not predict the future in terms of everything, but I can provide guidance on future events in your life.
So fascinating.
And world events as well.
I know, and I really, really want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So can you describe like kind of the differences between some of the other like psychic abilities that there are? Because there's quite a few, and I think people can get quite confused about all the different types.
Yeah, so I mean there's a lot of, the main common ones that people will probably have heard before are, the clairvoyance and the clairaudience.
Yeah.
Honestly, they all kind of fall under the same umbrella for me. I just think it's making it overcomplicated by using all these different
Right.
terms to be very fair. But, clairaudience.
Connect to another realm.
Oh,
That's all that
exactly.
matters.
It's like we're just tuning the radio frequency in to be able to connect with spirit. But some people have different strengths. So clairvoyance, for example, can be seeing things. So like I'm clairvoyant as well. So I see in my head. Clairaudience is when people hear things. So they can be hearing voices, hearing music. I have the ability to kind of combine them all. So I've collected the series, inverted commas, in a lot of ways.
That's amazing. Is
So
that really rare?
Well, I think everyone, first and foremost, has the ability to be able to do what I do to start with. So I always say there's nothing necessarily special about me because we're all souls having a human experience. We're not humans having a spiritual experience. But through, working as long as I have and just continually training and practicing and things like that, I've been able to develop sort of extrasensory skills as well. So a big one that I'm working on at the moment is taste and smell.
Oh my God,
So
what?
sometimes spirit will like come forward and they'll reference different foods, but they won't say it. I can actually taste it.
Oh
So it's
God,
really fun. And
that's
my mum
so
and I actually have a
trippy.
really cool thing as well, where she can sometimes think of a food and I'll instantly taste it as well.
What?
Yeah, it's really cool.
So you've obviously finessed your skill as the years have gone on, but
Yeah.
is it something that you were even aware of as a child?
I had no idea. So a lot of mediums that do have a public profile, especially the big overseas ones as well, they always reference knowing since they were children because they either saw spirits at the end of the bed or they used to hear things. And I never had any of that. And I think as a child, and especially as a teenager as well, I was always very intuitive. Like my gut feeling was always very switched on. The advice I was able to give people was pretty bang on as well. But I was very black and white. For those that don't know, my background is corporate. I worked in legal for most of my 20s and I didn't believe in an afterlife necessarily. I wasn't raised religious. I didn't have the understanding that I have now, that's for sure. And for me, life was what you see is what you get, and you kind of make it up from there. But I was always very open-minded. So even though I didn't necessarily know about it, I didn't necessarily shut it off completely. And I got recommended to go see a medium when I was 24. And at that stage, I had loved ones that had crossed over. And I was like, oh, I kind of went for shits and gigs though. I was kind of, I wasn't really expecting it to work, but I was like, all right, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And she blew my mind away within the first few minutes of me being there. Some of the conversations that we were having, and she was recounting conversations I'd had with loved ones. We could sit here for 100 years. You wouldn't even guess it.
Oh my
And
God.
she said to me, probably about 5-10 minutes into it, or probably halfway through, she was like, you realize you can do this? And I was like, no way. She goes, I thought you knew, but the more that we're talking, the more that I realize you don't really understand what I'm sort of showing or saying. And yeah, long story short, she ran a mentoring class and I ended up going to that. And it was so casual and low key. It was around her couch on a Wednesday night. And it was basically giving us the safe sort of environment just to be able to connect with her guidance. And I did workshops with her for about 2 years.
Wow.
Whilst still working in corporate and still living the normal, inverted commas, normal routine.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't even really understand, how does someone teach you those skills to be able to do what you do?
Well, it's already within us. It is so natural to the human soul or the human psyche already. It's just more so about recognizing it and developing it and also trusting in it. I always say that spiritual growth within us all is kind of like a muscle. The more that you strength test it, the stronger it will get. So first and foremost, it's about listening to your intuition and your gut feelings, because the more that you do pay attention to it, the stronger that will get. But spirit's always around us. And, science understands energy and all that as well. I always say, just because we cross over doesn't mean that we cease to exist. And science understands that as well, because energy doesn't cease to exist. So for all of us, we live a very normal kind of life and we've got this routine and we look at how life is. But there's so much going on around us that we don't understand or we don't see. And we're not taught to either. We're not taught to even harness inner powers like that.
Yeah.
So for all of us, it's kind of like tuning, I say it's like tuning a radio frequency in your mind. You're changing the radio station to be able to connect to different energies and different vibrations. And again, that's not spiritual. Even science understands that.
Totally. You've said so many things in there that I want to deep dive into.
3-part podcast series.
Totally, yeah, we're going to have to. Otherwise, we'll be here all afternoon. But I think what I find really fascinating on that is because I have this theory that when we're born, we're super connected to this other realm and space because we're fresh out of the universe. We don't really know where we come from. And I feel like children are incredibly intuitive. And it's also the same when you pass on. It's when people often say that they have a lot of experiences about feeling closer to some other realm or something else there, or maybe a slight like spiritual connection or awakening. And a lot of people reference that when they're on their deathbed. And so I wonder, and I'm keen to get your perspective on this. Do you think that like a child, if they were encouraged to listen more into their intuition and to lean more into this kind of stuff, that it would be so much more accessible and so much more common?
110%. So I say children, usually under the ages of 6 and 7, they kind of are, well, they're not kind of, they really are the spiritual leaders of the planet. Because
I love that.
they don't have social conditioning yet. They don't have ego. They don't even know how to lie like adults do. They're just so open and they're so absorbent of everything going on around them. So if they sense energies that adults can't see, they don't automatically get scared by it because they don't know the difference. So they're just so open and soaking everything in. So children, I think every parent that has a child already knows that they were probably saying certain things when they were younger or picking up on certain things that they couldn't necessarily see.
Yeah, or even, you know, seeing kids who start recounting like past life experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Because it all, I mean, it's such a deep conversation, but it all leads into sort of the soul journey and the overall soul energy. So even when we are in the physical world, our whole being and our whole energy is not anchored here. Like there's parts of us that still exist in sort of the realm or the universe, for want of a better phrase. So for children to be able to connect with that, that's when they can pick up on past lives because that part of them still exists out there. That's such a deep conversation.
No, I love it. I mean, I can go so deep into that stuff. It just like gets me going.
And then on the other end of the spectrum where you were talking about, especially people when they are coming to the end of their time in the physical world, they can pick up on certain things and they pick up on just different environments. The soul journey and our soul knows why it's on earth. And it also knows when it's time to leave. Now, the human side of us doesn't because, you know, we all know that unfortunately we will cross over one day. We don't know when and how or why. And we're not meant to because that sort of changes our whole journey. Because if I said to you right now, and I don't know anyway, but if I said to you right now, like, okay, Tess, you're going to pass over in 42 years, like knowing that would mentally instantly change your whole life from today onwards. And we're not meant to. But the soul knows when it will. So especially when it gets towards the end of its time in the physical world, it is then reconnecting with different energies again. And it's sort of looking at life differently. So I've had loved ones.
So, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was just about to say, I've had loved ones that have felt things around them towards the end of their time on earth.
Yeah, same. We had a friend pass about a year or two ago and he was recounting experiences with people who had passed on the other side when he was still physically here, when he was in those really final stages.
It's very special.
Very special and had almost like a somewhat spiritual awakening in those last few weeks. And, you know, when people find peace with that idea of crossing over, which normally often doesn't come right until the end, I think when they feel connected.
Yeah.
But you spoke about soul journey and that. And I think that's really fascinating because I've heard you speak about our like soul contract. And I think that's worth exploring a bit because I'm really interested in that, but I think it's quite a complex conversation. So what do you mean by soul journey?
Well, first and foremost, I'm such a strong believer in past lives as well. So this isn't necessarily our first time here, but I look at life on earth as kind of like a classroom. And I always say life is classroom for the soul because the soul comes to earth and there's things that it needs to learn. There's things that it needs to experience and grow through and evolve. Just like when we were in school, when we learned English and maths and science and geography, the soul comes here to learn relationships and history and life and, you know, the trials and tribulations and the triumphs and tragedies of the soul journey on earth. So in that sense, it comes here to evolve. And when everything is concluded or when it's done everything it can, it crosses over again.
So does that mean that we don't necessarily have control over what's happening in our lives, or we do?
It's both.
Right.
Yeah. So in that sense, because that's such a great question as well, because so many people are like, well, does that mean that everything's pre-written and we don't have any choice over our lives? And the answer is kind of yes and no. So I say life is kind of like a triangle. There's key points in our lives that we cannot avoid because that's the whole reason the soul is here. Like to use you for an example, like the fact that you've met Sean, the fact that you're pregnant, like that was always conspiring to happen because there's such strong parts of your journey. But life is like a triangle, like I said. So the key points are all up here that we cannot avoid. That being said, we do have free will over the choices or the pathways that we take. But inevitably, whatever pathway or choice we take will still end up at that point anyway. Right. And that goes into the saying it's the journey, not the destination, because it's the journey to those points is where the soul learns all its lessons or its opportunities and how it evolves and learns and grows.
And about repeating certain lessons
Exactly.
until we've really learned it and understood it.
And if you don't do it again, then you come back another time and do it all over again.
And again, and again.
So
another breakup, another this.
Exactly. So there's key points we can't avoid, but we still have free will at the same time.
So how do you, because I've spoken about this with people before, and the most common question that I get in response to when I suggest this as a theory is, well, how do you explain, say, like a child that's born with cancer or someone who's born into a war zone? Like, how do you explain that, or even someone who passes suddenly, like a tragic death? How do you explain that in terms of a soul contract? Is that to do with a karmic loop pattern from a past life, or how would you kind of see that?
Well, it can be a lot of different things. It definitely can be sometimes a karmic loop pattern. Now, obviously, when we look at, say, a child that's born with a severe illness, like that's horrific, and no one would ever want that, and no one would ever wish that on anyone, because of course we wouldn't. However, the universe doesn't look at things as necessarily a positive or a negative. It looks at it more as a lesson or what the soul can learn from it. And, you know, to use a terrible example of a child born with cancer, okay, well, that happens, but not only is that child still learning through its journey, but it's also the parents, the families, the friends that are all learning through that experience. And sometimes the biggest lessons are also the most negative. Because when we are happy or when we are content, we're not growing because we don't want anything to change. The soul learns, in my experience, I've found, the soul learns the biggest lessons and the most by going through challenging circumstances or tragedies in some ways, because that's how we evolve and grow and how life changes around us.
Almost like you saying that you went to go and see this psychic yourself when people in your life have passed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, as I said as an example, there's not necessarily anything that's positive or negative. The human can definitely look at it and be like, well, that's horrific. Like, no one would ever wish that on anyone. But the soul understands that there's a bigger lesson and a bigger purpose for why all these different events are occurring.
It's so fascinating. Yeah. And do you believe, so I guess, like, do you believe in karma? And that, because I believe in karmic loops, that what we do in this life is what could potentially play out in our next life. And so 100%. That's all kind of relevant in our soul contract we're setting in this life.
No, I completely believe in it. I call it universal rebalancing. So it's kind of like, but it's the same theory that, you know, our actions will have consequences, essentially. Karmic soul journey loops are very interesting topics because the overwhelming majority of the overwhelming majority of us don't even know what we did in our past lives.
Totally.
So it's like, well, how are we meant to learn the lessons? But some of it can definitely be relevant into this life as well. But it's about reconnecting, about if you're finding yourself in certain patterns or certain loops, like even delving into that as the human in front of us right now. Like, okay, well, why is this repeating? What do I need to be doing differently? It does require a lot of self-reflection as well.
So fascinating. I could talk about this specific
I'm loving all this. This is
hours.
A cool party already.
Thanks.
Getting into some deep, fun questions.
I know, but I do really want to just quickly rewind and go back to your transition from corporate to this world, because it's obviously a complete parallel. And for anyone transitioning from a career to a different career can be quite like daunting, confronting, but especially when it's such a contrasted career path. So what was that like for you?
I mean, it was such an interesting journey because I think all of us are born into this sort of world and we're raised in a certain way of living that we have to live life a certain way because that's how our parents did it. That's how society does it. Like, you have to have a 9 to 5, you have to have a mortgage, you have to live life like this. And even when I started exploring my spiritual side, I never saw that as a proper pathway or even the career that I built as David the Medium, because at the very start, I kind of looked at it more like a party trick in some ways, because I still had that mindset that life had to be this. And I was going to work in law and I was studying counterterrorism and I was going to end up working for the government, you know, things like that.
It's wild.
It's so different.
So wild.
But for anyone who is exploring different ways of living or even a different pathway, like, I mean, my main advice is just take the jump and know that you'll always land on your feet, because if it's meant to be, it's already written. And for me, it was, I mean, my story is a bit different as well, because the universe kind of pushed me into it in some ways. Not that I was resistant, but it was just that mindset that I didn't really think that it was ever going to be anything. And then, we rewind back to 2016 and I was working a completely toxic job surrounded by absolute morons. And I kind of ended up leaving that job on the same day. And then I was kind of like about to turn 30 and I'm like, well, you're kind of unemployed. You haven't finished studying. You are a medium, yes, but like what are you doing with life, bro? Like,
Right? I feel like there'd be a bit of an identity crisis at that point. Like, what am I actually doing here?
Like I was kind of reading people, maybe even though I was working corporate, I was still reading people on the side. Like I'd sort of have like 1 or 2 clients a week, but it was something that I just enjoyed doing. I never saw it as a proper pathway or a purpose for me. And then when I stopped working full time in corporate, I suddenly had clients message me being like, are you ever free during the week? And I'm like, actually, I kind of am at the moment. Like I'm not really doing anything. And it really just kind of grew from there. But the biggest thing for everyone, just don't be resistant to change, because we all have these, as we were saying, these beliefs of how life should be. But who's to say that it has to be like that?
Yeah.
And the more that you delve into it with the trust and the faith in your own self and your own beliefs and your own skills and your own mindsets, like irregardless of whatever happens around you, if you're solid, everything will always work out how it's meant to. And I just had to sort of take the jump and knew that I'd land on my feet. And I kind of had it in my mind that if I could be sort of booked out 2 weeks ahead, then I'll feel like I've, inverted commas, made it.
Achieved.
Exactly. And then,
Totally.
and then the more that I lent into it.
Isn't it?
Exactly. It's such a conditioning thing. So it's just the way, as we're all conditioned to believe certain things, either from society or our family or from what we see.
It's such a beautiful lesson in that, because I think everything that you're talking about all comes back to trust. And it's like trusting your intuition was the start of how you developed this new skill and this new life path.
Yeah.
But it's the same with anything you do. Like you don't have to be in the spiritual realm at all to, I guess, stay connected with yourself, to really trust yourself. And I think when you're in that place of trusting is when the universe does open up those opportunities and those doors for you.
100%, because like you said, it doesn't have to be a spiritual journey that you're on. It can be you want to start a new career, you want to date a different kind of person, whatever it is. But I always say the universe doesn't owe us a thing. It will match the energy that you put out. And if anything, the universe is waiting for us to realize who we are, or waiting for us to show ourselves about who we think we can be or what we think our potential is. And when you really put that energy out, the universe will match it. It's not there to change you, because if you don't change, nothing will change. And that's simple. We all know that already anyway. If we don't make changes in our life, then our life isn't going to radically change for the better around us. So it will match energy that you put out.
That's so beautiful. So what was the moment that you really started trusting yourself within this work? Because obviously it's not something that we're conditioned to do normally or be the norm.
Yeah.
So was there like a bit of a initial questioning in your mind whether you really could do this, whether this was really real, whether what you were seeing and hearing and feeling was actually correct and real? Like, did you go through that kind of process?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even when I went to the mentoring class at the very start, I didn't think anything was really going to happen. But then even when I got up in front of the class and I connected with spirit for the first time, it was like, I could see things and I could feel things. And the biggest thing for me is that was instantly relating to people in the room. So I was kind of like, oh, this does work. And, and you can see the emotional reaction that they were having.
Wow.
But even at the very start, like I did see it as more of like a party trick or something that I could use as a sort of an extra fun thing to put in under my belt, but it was never going to be anything that sort of grew from it. But then
whip it out at a party and be like, oh, so your grandpa.
Well, I kind of used to do that. Like I'm in my mid-20s and I'm drunk in a nightclub on a Saturday night actually reading people. Like, you know what I mean? 'Cause it's sort of like, I know it sounds so weird when you say it like that now, but I was kind of like, it's kind of like this extra fun thing. And I think the biggest moment for me was when I realized sort of the healing impact it can have on other people, like when they're able to connect with their loved ones and they have that undeniable proof that they are receiving messages that are relating to them, and just the overall benefit that can not only have to their life, but also just the forms of closure and connection that can build within them to know that their loved ones are still around them. And then I was like, no, this is something that's really special, and I'm so fortunate to be able to be that person. And then it just kind of just grew from there, and it's something that I just wanted to explore even more. And the deeper that I got into it, I realized that I never wanted to stop doing it. And that's kind of when David the Medium was born. Yeah.
That is honestly amazing. I'm curious to know, was there like one prediction early on that really like amazed you, or when you really realized your capabilities?
The biggest one for me was definitely COVID. So, David the Medium was around in 2019, but I didn't necessarily have the image or the profile that I have now. And I think the biggest thing for me that really came from predicting was talking about sort of really big world changes that I could sense that were about to happen in 2020. And we started talking about this really towards the end of 2019, like really from October, November onwards. I was like, no, guys, there's really big changes about to come next year, because you could just feel it. It was kind of like standing on a beach watching the tsunami come towards you. Like we knew that everything was about to change. And I started making a lot of predictions around that and everything that would happen. And then lo and behold, everyone's like, who is this random guy talking about all these big world changes that are coming in like February, March next year? And then COVID happened and kind of just took off from there. And then I was making like even really silly predictions, like, oh, I think the king's going to get it, things, or the queen at that stage. And
you made some incredible predictions.
That got really random. But I even said at the very start, like Melbourne will have 6 lockdowns. And everyone's like, you joking? Like this is going to be a thing that goes for like 2 months. And I'm like, oh guys, might be a little bit longer. And then it was just the journey through COVID, really.
Fascinating. I actually saw this TikTok video last night, and it was about like psychics predicting the future. And he was trying to explain that there are like an infinite number of probable realities. So we kind of can still determine what's going to happen or like change the course, because things change based off frequency and where we align ourselves. I'm curious to get your take on that. Like, do you think that there's just one scenario or that you like clearly see, or is there like multiple scenarios that could happen in the future and you're just looking for like the clearest one? Or
yeah, I think because everything is energy, then energy is infinite. So to then translate it into pathways, then that means that there is an infinite amount of pathways. When I'm connecting as a psychic, I think there is definitely some that are very, very aligned and a lot stronger than some other pathways, of course. But timelines are very fluid at the same time as well. But I still believe, to use, my triangle analogy from before, irregardless of how many different pathways they are, there's always going to be key events that we're always going to end up regardless. Now then this gets really deep then, but then it delves into like alternative realities and different timelines that are happening all at the same time. But when I'm connected, I know, like, we have a whole day for that conversation. Like even it blows my mind.
We'll definitely do a part 2. Okay.
But then when I like to be very sort of mainstream and very sort of matter of fact. And irregardless of the amount of realities that we can have, we're dealing with this one right now. And we're dealing with you and I in front of us and our lives. And there might be other versions of Tess and other versions of David out there, but good luck to them, because we're dealing with us. Like, you know what I mean?
That's so weird.
So when you sort of narrow it down into the timelines that we're on, then there is only sort of, very specific key things that will react to us all.
Gotcha.
Now, there could be a nuclear war tomorrow for another version of Tess, but Tess in front of me right now is not dealing with that. So
we don't want that.
I'm not going to connect with that version.
Today's Tess doesn't want that. Exactly. We're saying no to that.
So we're not feeling that because I'm not connecting with that version
We're
of
not
Tess.
connecting with that frequency. No, thank you.
This is such a fun potty. Everyone's like, what are they doing?
Please tell us there's no nuclear bombings happening this year.
Not this year. No.
Oh my God, don't.
A little bit of a sprinkle of a teaser into the future, maybe.
Oh dear. Oh my God, I don't like that. Okay, so I'm so fascinated. So what do you actually like see and hear and feel when you're doing a reading on someone?
Yeah, so when I predominantly sit down with someone, you've touched on the 3 clear things that I aim to do. So it's being able to see, hear, and feel spirit. So when I see spirit, it's kind of like I will see you like I'm seeing you right now, but if I close my eyes, they'll kind of be shadows or people behind you. But I won't.
Can you see someone like right now?
Not right now, but like,
like all the time.
Unless anyone's asking, yes, I can. No,
okay.
But then, when I see things, I can see energies, I can see them. But then they will also show me images in my head. So they will bring up things that are relevant to me if it's relevant to you. Sometimes I will look like I'm watching a home movie in my head because they're showing me parts of your life or their life. The hearing is, a lot of spirit will use my internal voice to speak, but sometimes I will actually hear their voices.
Wow.
And it kind of sounds like they're in the corner of the room yelling out at me.
Wow.
But they will also play music. I will hear sounds, just anything that's audio. And then feeling is I can not only feel emotions, I can actually feel them at the same time as well. But if they had a heart attack, for example, my heart will get sore. If they had like a brain tumor, the back of my head will get sore. So it's about also feeling ailments, illnesses, and emotion.
Wow.
And then I've added in, like I said, the bonus packs from before to be able to sometimes taste and smell as well.
I feel like literally even hearing you talk about it gives me goosebumps.
Well, goosebumps is actually spirits getting close to you. So
getting the cheese. I feel like I'm someone who watched way too many horror movies growing up. And so like now the whole concept of beings and someone like around, it kind of freaks me out. Like I get really wigged out sleeping home alone, and I always think like, what if there's like, you know, someone in the corridor or like calling out, or like times when I've had like sleep paralysis and you feel like there's like, you know, something there. But I feel like there is in that world and in film and TV, there's such this negative connotation around this kind of work because it's always depicted as like a horror movie or a scary movie.
100%.
Have you ever had like an experience that like kind of freaks you out?
Not overtly. I mean, but you raise such a good point, because pop culture and the way that we look at this has always taught us that it is something that's a little bit scary or supernatural, or you shouldn't really delve into it or touch it. I always say it's not supernatural. It's actually just super natural, because we're all connected. We're all experiencing it. It's nothing to necessarily be scared of. Now, do I believe in hauntings? Yes. Do I believe that there can be negative energies? Yes. But it also comes with, are you going to allow that into your life or no? So from my perspective, when I'm connecting as a psychic medium, I connect with sort of high vibrational energies. Now, negative energies obviously operate on a more of a lower vibration. So I'm not feeling them or connecting with them. And I use the analogy to make it a bit more simple for everyone. Like, I'm your inner city nightclub that has a dress code. I'm not letting you in if you're going to wear thongs. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not letting you in if you're wearing like swimwear or shorts. Now, there might be some other places that will, but I'm not going to connect with them.
Interesting.
So it's all about what you allow in. But do I believe in hauntings? Yes, because everything is energy, and sometimes things can leave a negative imprint behind. You know, if I was to put my hand down on the table and lift my hand up, under the certain cameras, you'll still see the UV imprint of my hand.
Really?
I've left my energy behind.
Right. Okay.
Like the heat signals and things like that. So the way that we then translate it, well, if you're in a room for 20 years, like that's 20 years of energy that you're leaving in that room, because it's not being cleared in any way. It's still existing. So when you've got certain places that we consider to be, you know, haunted, like hospitals, prisons, mental institutions, like they're all kind of heavy negative places for a lot of people. So that energy is getting left behind. So understandably, the whole vibe of it is not a positive one. So can souls be trapped in certain environments? I don't necessarily believe that. They're not necessarily trapped there, but that some of them can be connected to it still.
Interesting, because I've heard that some people say that, I guess, ghosts exist, which is beings that haven't properly crossed over. Do you believe in that?
No, I don't believe. I don't believe that any soul can be trapped here or not cross over properly, because there's no reason why they wouldn't. If that makes sense. Like, they can still be connected to certain places, but that doesn't mean that they're trapped there. Our loved ones can connect with us, but it doesn't mean that they're trapped with us. It's the same sort of thing. They're in spirit, but they're able to connect to us.
Yeah, okay. So do you still, though, have to do things to protect your own energy if you're always dealing with the feelings and emotions and experiences of other people?
Yeah. I mean, every time I go into a reading, I subconsciously just kind of put a bubble around me. And it sounds so silly, but it's kind of like an energetic force field.
Yeah.
But spirit's also very respectful. Like, they don't want to hang out with me if I'm not with their loved ones.
Right.
So even when I finish the reading, like, they disappear as well,
They're
because
like,
they don't want to hang out with me. Like, I don't take offense to it, but
We're
why would
not
they? Like, exactly. We're not friends. Like, I tell them to add me on Instagram, they still don't. So I don't know. Like, so in that sense, but I do the spiritual 101. Like, I sage my space once a week, and for all those that don't know, sage and Palo Santo is this energetic clearing. Like, the smoke of it will clear spaces as well. So,
You know, I love both of those things. Yeah. It's just the smell. I'm like, drown me in it.
Even the smell. Yeah, Palo Santo smells great anyway.
I love both of them. I'm just like, give it to me. Cleanse me. I'm curious to know, though, because it is something that is such a unique, I guess, skill. Do you ever go through feelings of feeling like isolated or different because you maybe can't share these experiences with the average person around you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really fortunate in the sense that I've got such a good friend network and a good family network that not only understands what I do, but they're all open to it as well. And it's, to use the saying, your vibe attracts your tribe. my vibe is I want to attract people that understand it. So I don't want to be friends with every single medium on the, I mean, I do, yes, but like, I don't want all my friends to be mediums.
Yeah.
But they're the kinds of people, like my close friends, that even if they don't understand it, they accept it. So it's like fun.
Yeah.
But I never feel alone in that sense. Like I think, the more that I sort of delve into it, it's very unique. Like I guess maybe my friends don't have the ability that I have, but I know that they could if they wanted to.
Do your friends always come to you and they're like, can you like tell me what's going to happen with this job outcome or with my relationship?
Yeah, my office hours are 9 to 5. Come back on Monday. But like, but I'm fortunate as well. Like, a lot of my close circle are people that I was good friends with or connected with before I was David the medium anyway.
Yeah.
So they kind of still look at me as just David,
Yeah.
which is great. And I say, like, I'm obviously the same person, but I am David and I am also David the medium. This is kind of the two versions of us all in the one.
Totally. And I guess we all have that to some regard. We've got our work face and our personal space. And So I'm curious to know, like, have you ever had like one client reading though that's just left you like speechless and almost shocked at your own kind of skill?
I mean, there's always circumstances where things get brought up and I'm like, what the fuck? Like some of them is so random. Like not to sound morbid, but sometimes when people pass over in really unique circumstances, like I never forget, like, I mean, like I'll use one example.
Yeah.
But there was a guy who passed over in the Balkans War in the 1990s in Europe. And he was escaping police, but he put 2 grenades under his arm and pulled the pin. And I'll never forget that because I felt it.
Oh my God.
But I couldn't work out what happened to him. I was like, I feel like I'm in a lot of different pieces. But I feel like everyone listening is like,
why is my arm on that part of the room?
Basically, that's kind of what it felt like.
Holy
and I was like, I'm so sorry to ask, but what happened to him? And they're like, well, he blew himself up. I'm like, I haven't had that happen before.
Wow.
So
that must be so surreal to kind of
it's
feel
bizarre.
that.
Like I know you can't even describe it, but for me, 99% of the time, I don't actually remember the readings because the messages don't come from me, so they also don't stay with me either. So I can do a full day of readings where I'll read 4 or 5 people a day. But by the end of the day, I won't even really, I won't forget the face of who I read that morning, but I won't remember what I've said to them. And then I'll wake up the following morning and I won't remember a word. So that's
it's like you're so in tune with where you are at that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
So because it's not things that I'm passing on to them, it's things that their loved ones want them to know or the universe wants them to know.
Yeah. In saying that though, I'm curious to know, have you ever had like an internal conflict with revealing someone's fate or future?
No. I decided very early on in my career that it wasn't for me to filter anything at all because it's not mine to make that decision. So if I ever sense anything, if I ever feel anything, then I always pass it on. Now, in that sense, spirit's never overtly negative with anyone and they're not there to scare you or to pass on any information that they think is going to harm you. Now, that being said, we still talk about negative things that happen in life, but spirit will always touch on it with the way of how best to cope with it or how best to deal with it or how best to find a resolution around it. They're never overtly going to be like, oh, you're going to be in a car crash next week and you're going to hurt your arm. They're going to be like, okay, there can be some events that will happen next week and maybe just be careful when you're driving. Like, it's always with the element of guidance around it. So hopefully that makes sense to people as well.
Totally,
I don't want them to be scared by anything because it's nothing to be scared of.
Do you read your own future? Like,
oh, you know what? Like I actually can't. So
really?
A lot of mediums, and not every medium, but the overwhelming majority of mediums actually can't connect with their own loved ones or their own sort of journey. Now, I have a very strong intuition about certain things in my life, especially when it comes to future things. But I can't connect with my own loved ones. I can definitely feel them around, but I can't speak to them like I would speak to yours, for example.
Fascinating.
And the way that I word that, like, we all have people in our lives that we love. So, my mum's my best friend. When she crosses over, like, I'd want to spend 24/7 in my head talking to her. But then that means I wouldn't be living my life. I wouldn't be doing my journey. So I think in some ways it's kind of like a protective thing. So then you're still living your own soul journey and still living your own life instead of being connected.
So that's pretty much the universal thing that most like psychics would agree on.
Yeah, most mediums and psychics, can't really. Some can, and I don't know how they manage to do it, but I think it's also that they're not doing it necessarily 24/7 or they're not doing it as deeply as they would for their clients. But I can definitely feel mine around and I still get signs from them and I can test them. Like I'll ask for certain signs that are really random and specific, but they'll always deliver it to me. So
So
I just can't talk to them.
right. So damn, it's like I want to know the
I
answers.
know. It's
of my
like,
life.
can you
come
help
on.
guide me? But like,
Yeah.
my intuition's always very strong anyway, so it's fine.
So interesting. And I love that you said at the start that like everyone kind of has this skill set. And I'm just really fascinated in it because I would love to probably connect just more deeply with, I don't know if I'd really want to go like that deep into it. It might freak me out a bit, but I don't know, just like being really connected with our like internal intuition. I think it's like so important. And I love early on that you referenced the gut and the brain connection and like everything like stems from the gut, you know, butterflies in our gut feeling. And this is obviously the place where all of this starts. So I guess what would you kind of advise people? Do you have any recommendations for people who want to like get more in tune with like themselves or maybe even messages from their guides or anything in that realm?
I mean, it's such a big self journey for everyone, I find. And for people that are wanting to delve into it, I say wanting to be able to do it means that you're already 99% of the way there anyway. But it does require a lot of internal reflection, a lot of self work. Like changing your frequencies and changing your energies isn't something that's necessarily done overnight, but pay attention to your daily habits. Like I said, things that are negative for you, like how do we cut that out? But it's kind of like we were saying before, like the more that you listen to your gut feeling, like every single person has things that have occurred in their life where they're like, oh, my gut would have said that, or they get really crazy synchronicities in life. Pay attention to it because then that's like flexing the muscle. And the more that you pay attention to it, the stronger that it will get. For those that are maybe wanting to delve into mediumship or being able to connect with different frequencies, start practicing with even people that you feel comfortable with. Start reading like your friends or people that you just feel safe with. And it doesn't mean that you have to sit down like a David the Medium with them for 45 minutes and give them all these banging messages. But I think everyone, even if they're not trying to do that, we always sometimes intuitively feel things for our friends anyway.
Yeah.
Like I don't doubt that you probably sat down with girlfriends and been like, you know, you just sense things.
So true.
So trust it. Listen to it. Pay attention to it. Meditate. Like the best thing you can do is just center in your energy and calming it, even just for your own emotional and mental well-being. And, you know, meditation doesn't have to be, you know, sitting in a quiet room with music playing going on. Like it's just being able to just take that moment.
Still. And
sometimes I do it when I'm driving. Like I don't close my eyes, obviously, but like you just still the mind and chill the mind out.
it's so true. I feel like when I'm in a really good place with my spiritual practices and meditating, it's when I feel like most aligned in my life. And it's when I do notice signs, I guess. I'm sure we're always getting signs, but it's like, are we in a receiving state? You know, and that definitely comes from like finessing our own energy and our own stillness and our own like connection to ourselves.
100%, because life is so chaotic and it always is. I mean, we've created such a busy, non-stop world for ourselves that, you know, we're not, to use the analogy, we're not stopping to smell the roses.
No.
So take that time to stop and smell the roses and then you'll realize how much everything around you actually does smell really good.
Such an important lesson.
Yeah, 100%.
We can all take that one on board.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be an hour every day, 5 minutes.
Yeah. It's actually really easy. We just have to allow ourselves the time.
Just have to allow it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if you're open to it, I'd love to do like a little mini reading if you're keen. But just quickly, I have some rapid fire predictions for 2024.
Oh, God.
Are you
okay.
keen?
Oh, I'm nervous, but I'm keen.
Bet you didn't see that one coming. Don't worry, there's only a couple.
Yeah.
Okay. US presidential election.
Oh, God.
I bet you get this all the time.
I mean, I want Donald Trump to win.
Anyone who sees your political stories probably knows that.
I will openly admit it now. I've always liked Donald Trump.
We've had some great chats about all this
Oh,
political
I mean,
stuff. I love that you're into politics.
It's so fluid in America right now at the same time as well. So this is meant to be rapid fire and I'm going to go off on a 10-minute
I
rant
love
about it.
Carry on. Go on a tangent.
I don't think that they will allow him to win.
Interesting.
So, but like, I'm so 50-50. Like, I think he
Really?
could again. Spirit always said that he would win twice. I mean, not to get all like controversial, but I think he won in 2020 anyway. So does that count as him winning twice?
Gotcha.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think we'll know. Yeah, I don't know because
It's such a hard one though, because you're right, because there are so many forces trying to, what it looks like is pull him away from his current like campaign. Being tied up in courts.
Yeah, I
and all that
don't
stuff.
think that Donald Trump will win. But if he
Interesting.
I don't even know whether he'll like be there.
What's your thoughts on RFK?
I'm not a big
Really
fan
interesting.
of
I
him.
love him.
Yeah.
Okay. AFL Grand Final winner.
When you said that, I saw a lot of red. I actually haven't even thought about the AFL Grand Final this year. So it's what, mid-May or end of May? I saw a lot of red when you asked that.
Do you know the second colour? I hope it's what I think you're going to say.
What? Like black?
Some blue.
Oh, you're both
no
from Melbourne,
black.
don't you?
Yeah.
I was thinking Essendon. Yeah, so I mean, what are the red teams? We've got Sydney, so I don't know where they are. Essendon, Melbourne, yeah.
Okay, so we've got some red. Okay,
We'll
that's
see
good.
red. Okay, we'll keep it at
That's
that.
good for finals. I'm happy with that.
I usually get the AFL team right when the season finishes for, the top 8. Then I can always tell who will win then.
Oh my God, so cool. Okay, I'll be hitting you up for some
No,
tips.
but maybe red.
Or we'll do a part 2 then. Just give everyone the tips. Biggest conspiracy that's going to come true this year.
Oh,
this is a hard one. I'm sorry. I've totally thrown you under the bus here.
The biggest conspiracy that's going to come true this year, probably the digital ID.
Oh.
Yeah. Around sort of control around the internet and digital IDs.
Fascinating.
But
What's the
then-
digital IDs for anyone that doesn't know?
Oh God,
In
how do you
short.
even? Yeah, in short. No, I don't do anything in short, Tess. This is
Okay, sorry.
No, so and Spirit actually referenced this before I even knew that it was like a conspiracy theory, but that the internet would essentially go off, or that there wouldn't be any anonymity on the internet. So everyone would have to have a digital ID to be able to do things in life, like connect to the internet and things like that as well. So I think that will kind of be something that's inevitably going to come out. But in terms of conspiracy theories, I mean, there's so much around the vaccine that's already come out. This is getting to the like real conservative conspiracy theories.
A lot of that is coming
yeah, probably
out,
a lot of things with Donald Trump still.
Yeah. Fascinating. It's such a wild time we're living in, isn't it? It's just hard to comprehend
I just got to ride the
sometimes.
wave. Like,
Totally. Just going to go with it. Because you also said the word for 2024 was adapt.
Adapt, yeah.
And I'm really keen to know what you thought about that, because I'm kind of like, how much more do we need to adapt? I feel like we've been adapting for so many years now. I'm like, how much more can we adapt?
100%.
What did you actually mean by that? Or what stood out for you most?
Well, it was really funny because that word came to me. I was actually having dinner with a friend of all things. But adapt essentially means evolving in the circumstances and stop trying to control it to like how you think it should be. It's more so about riding the wave and evolving with how to connect with things that maybe we wouldn't necessarily see. So if you don't bend, you break, essentially. So it's all about bending.
Keep bending, guys.
Keep bending.
Stay flexible.
That's fine. If we can't control it, don't let it control you.
Yeah, I love
So there's
that.
big events in life. Obviously, COVID was a massive one, war, all these negative things. Like we can't stop it from happening. So we just have to create that sort of space for us to just ride the wave with it.
Just find as much peace as we can
Exactly.
moving through.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true. Okay, do you feel like doing a little mini reading,
Yeah,
or do you want to do any
100%.
predictions for the future? It's totally up to you.
No,
Whatever
well,
you feel like.
I kind of want you to read me because I always say when women are pregnant,
Oh dear.
like this is like so woo-woo at the same time as well, but you are an actual portal to the afterlife at the moment because you are creating the physical body for a soul that's not necessarily of this world at the moment.
I always call birth like the portal of life. I just love it.
It is
Like,
technically, it actually is. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing. The whole, without sounding, the whole female reproductive system is a portal.
Yeah.
So when women are pregnant, like your psychic ability would be through the roof. You'd probably be having crazy
Really?
dreams, extra senses, things like that as well.
I'm
But
having a lot of dreams, very vivid dreams.
yeah,
Yeah.
pregnancy within women really brings out crazy, vivid dreams.
It's interesting too, because I feel like the baby starts to communicate with you. I've started having more and more dreams about the baby, and
Yeah.
we've been like tossing up between 2 names for her. And like the other day in a dream, I saw her and her sister in the dream, and it was very clear which name was for the firstborn and
Yeah.
which name was this. And then we're kind of speaking about it. I was
Exactly.
Like,
And
my mum
trust
was
it.
like, trust that.
Yeah,
That's them
100%.
communicating.
100% it is. Like I'll definitely get into the reading, but I love this conversation because that's the thing. Like the soul is connected to the body that the woman grows within her at the same time. I believe once it takes its first breath, that's when it enters completely into like a computer game, like a journey. But until then, the soul's still connected with you, and the womb becomes a portal because, as I said, it's in another dimension, in another frequency, but it's still connected. So your whole spiritual ability is still heightened at the same time.
It's so fascinating. I'm definitely going to go home and start meditating more and be like, all right, what can I
Focus on, but that's the thing. And a lot of women actually do reference having dreams about their baby, but they're not necessarily a baby. They're like a 4 or 5 year old girl or boy,
Yeah,
or sometimes
that's
they're
what
adults.
they were older.
And they will talk to you as well. Like you're not the first friend of mine that's actually said that they've had that. Like I had friends, it was last year, and they were like, "Oh, we don't really know what to name our son." He came forward in the dream and actually told them, and they're like, "That's
Yeah.
actually a great name." Like
Yeah,
things like
I
that.
love that stuff. Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into the red. Now, have you ever had, obviously not with me, but have you ever had one before?
Yes, I have. Kind of, yeah.
Like
I've
a-
had like mini ones.
Mini ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, coming into this, like I don't feel anything before I actually do sit down with someone. But as I was driving here, I was like, yeah, I want to read Tess, and I know we talked about it. Now, as soon as we sat down, though, you do have let's bring that in. The whole room just got really cold for me. You've got an older male who does come forward instantly, and there was either you were talking to him this morning or thinking about him. But I think coming into the reading, like I can only probably imagine that you would be anyway. He does reference the name Bob or Robert.
Fuck off.
So I take it that makes sense. Okay, good.
What?
And he says, no, of course I'm here. She is actually teasing you at the same time because he's got a really funny sort of personality trait because he says, even before Dave, when she said she didn't have that many people, he goes, well, what am I then? What am I? What am I?
Oh my God.
And
I'm freaking out.
And I don't know whether you're talking about him with family recently at the same time. There's reference to the significant other, which could also be Sean. But Sean will be able to have dreams of him soon. I don't think Sean did Sean meet him?
No.
No, that's it, because he's referencing that he will come to Sean in dreams or Sean will know more about me. This would be a grandfather, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, perfect, because he does reference himself as an older man.
That's his name, Robert or Bob.
Perfect,
He's called both.
I had an uncle in spirit called Rob, but he shows me him.
Wow. And I was thinking about him this morning, obviously, because he was the closest one that I had who's passed, and
perfect.
He was amazing.
Yeah,
He's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got this real lighthearted sort of funness to him as well because he sort of shows himself, and it's a funny reference of mine, but he does show himself as a golden retriever. Now, when Spirit references a golden retriever, it's kind of like that grandparent kind of dog, I always say.
Totally.
But he's got that real sort of softness to him, but he's also such an intelligent, switched on man, He does reference himself as birds around you at the same time as well. And don't be surprised, especially when you're in Brighton, because I know what your house that you're building looks like. But you are going to get 20 frog mouths around that. You know the owl, the 20 frog mouths?
An owl?
An owl. So it's a 20 frog mouth. It's like a...
That's his symbol. There was owls all over his house.
Good.
I can't deal. This is crazy.
So what he's sort of shown, because I've seen obviously on your Instagram, like the house that you're building, he does sort of show himself as an actual owl, but you will notice that around the house, especially around the same time that you're planning on moving in there. So if that's the symbol that you acknowledge with him, take that as validation that it will be him. There will be 220 frogmouths that actually do come to that house. Yeah, there's something about a cuckoo clock that's going to find its way to you at the same time as well. It might actually be the symbol of an owl on the cuckoo clock that either someone gives. I mean, it's a bit of a random gift, but they might find it's going to find its way to you, and he sort of references that at the same time. Now, he does sort of say towards, where does Stephen or Stephanie connect?
Stephen is my dad, his son.
Perfect. Your dad, perfect. And do you have German heritage?
I do. I'm half German on my mum's side.
Are you?
Yeah.
Perfect. My geography is very strong, so when Spirit wants to reference flags or geography, they can just show me. And I just saw the German flag in my head as well.
Fascinating.
And that was mum's side of the family, did you
Correct,
say? Perfect. Yeah. India?
India?
The name?
Yeah, my mum's name is Indira. Yeah.
Indira.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
It was Ina, and she changed it. So it's very similar. And she also, and it kind of referenced around the time she was traveling in India that she changed her name.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that's the thing, because I could hear like India, and then I was like, they're not referencing the country because I didn't see the flag, because that was obviously a conversation we were just having. But if she was in India, that's probably why they were saying India. But if it's Indira, a beautiful name, by the way. Indira.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
You're scheduled in. He says, but she's coming early. He's scheduled in. It's a very personal question. He's scheduled in for a C-section?
No.
She's coming early then.
Coming early.
Woohoo! Not like now, so don't stress. But like
not too early.
Yeah. Because there's a reference of how we schedule it in early, but there's no concern around that. So they're not saying that you need to schedule it in terms of like an emergency C-section. It's nothing like that. She's big. It's so funny because you don't even look pregnant at 6 months, but...
She's a Sean's daughter. She's going to be big.
Well, both of you are tall, actually, to be fair. Yeah.
True. As long as she doesn't have his head. It's way too big.
You're like one and done after that, yeah. But there's a reference of like, it's such a funny... I mean, Bob is actually quite funny. Like, he's got this real humour to him. But what he sort of shows is... it's such a weird reference. Do you know those clowns that pull the scarves out of their pockets and they just keep going on? It's like when you're giving birth, it's like they just keep pulling her out. Like, she's so big.
That's also so funny because he taught me a ton of magic tricks when I was little.
So I'm like, why am I referencing
tricks,
this? Like
so-
Spirit doesn't reference it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, if
He
that
was
makes
always,
sense.
yeah.
Because I'm like, Spirit does not show like scarves coming out of pockets like magic tricks like that. So I'm like, it's a weird reference for a birth, but
Yeah.
if it's relevant for him, that's perfect.
Oh my God.
You've actually already mentioned this as well, but Bob references that she's the mother of children.
She's the mother of children.
You're the mother of children, which I think you mentioned before with the dreams about having daughters, didn't you say?
Yeah.
So Spirit will never reference the sex of a second child if you don't even have the first yet. But more so than anything else, Bob is just so excited to be able to say hello because he says, I'm always there, Dave. I just haven't been able to talk like this. So has he ever come forward in readings at all?
No.
Really?
That's amazing. Can you send him messages?
He
Tell
can
him I
hear
love
you.
him so
Yeah,
much.
he can hear
And thanks for teaching me golf.
Golf?
Yeah, because now we're going to be a golfing family because Sean loves golf that much and our
He
daughter
says
already
Tess
has so
needs
many
to
golf
practice.
clubs. Yeah, but my skill set is still there
You'd
somewhere.
be better than
from
most, I'm
him.
sure. Yeah.
He taught me well.
As soon as you actually said golf, I saw a yellow ball. So I know they're not very common, but I don't know whether he ever, probably not gifted you a ball, but there's something about a yellow, like those real old school yellow golf balls that's been smoked on. So I don't know whether you have that with you or whether that's within, he says the family home, so that could also be with your parents. Or probably maybe even more with Steve, maybe.
Oh my God, I actually think I might have.
It's like an old yellow golf ball.
Yes.
It looks like it's been smacked about 20 times.
Yeah, because I think we actually got just a small container of golf balls from his house when he passed.
Yeah,
and there was definitely yellow
There's
or
just
yellow
gonna be-
ones in there.
So I know they're usually white, but he's referencing yellow.
Oh my God, so interesting.
And so there's something about a diamond, or it could even be like cubic zirconia, but there's something about a butterfly ring. Oh, it's not from him. Someone's going to gift you a butterfly ring.
We're definitely going to have to do a part 2 then.
Yeah, probably around the birth of your daughter. I wouldn't be surprised if you actually get a ring that's something to with a butterfly, or someone gives her something to a jewelry around a butterfly.
Wow.
There's definitely something that someone's gifting you that has wings, like a jewelry piece of wings. Like I want to say butterfly, but it could even literally be like a wing or something to do with like a bird or something like that. I don't know. But like, I mean, bird's a bit random for jewelry, but
Interesting. Well, I'll let you know if I get a gift like that.
when you get a gift. No.
Exactly.
No, good. They're actually referencing the question mark. Did you have any questions for me from them? Or for them?
Oh my God. Oh my God, I didn't.
I know I'm putting you on the spot now.
Yeah.
On your own podcast.
But now I know. But now that I have the opportunity, I'm like, oh my God, surely.
Yeah. There is still the reference, even as, sorry to interrupt you, but there's still the reference of even when she asked Dave to get her to dream. So it's the element of like, even if there's any questions that you have about life or about anything going on at the moment, it doesn't have to be right now even. It can be like this next week in August. You're so guided through dream state anyways. Because I mean, I'm a very strong believer anyway that when we sleep, we kind of connect with the astral. And I believe that we also see our loved ones when we sleep. We just don't remember it because we're not meant to. So anything that you've got going on in life, whether you're ever seeking guidance or on anything, ask before you go to bed.
I guess the only thing is I just always think I doubt my path, and that I'm like, I just want to know that like I'm given the confidence to know that like I'm on the right path and that everything I would like to achieve and do in my life this is the trajectory to do it. I think they're the biggest things that probably play on my mind.
Yeah, which going into that, there's a reference of how you've laid the groundwork, but it goes into even what you said. It's all about self-trust and self-belief.
Yeah.
And I mean, Bob just said if she thinks that she can't, then she won't, which is kind of even the conversation that we were having before. Like we have to put the energy out there and the universe will match it. So it's this element of having unshakable confidence in who she is. But like even for you, Tess, even as we're talking, they keep showing it's a good reference, but it's kind of like a bomb that then goes off. So it's sort of more like, well, I mean, he just worded it perfectly. The best is yet to come.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, David. I'm literally like, I'm shaking.
Even my energy just went, ooh.
I'm like fully, oh my God, that was, I actually have no words. I'm fully speechless. So I always wrap up the podcast with asking our guests to leave just a little verbal entry in the Tess Talks diary. So it's just like a little snapshot for you to leave behind, something that's maybe like a piece of advice or wisdom or a lesson that you've learned. So do you have something that you'd like to leave the listeners?
I always say for everyone, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So pay attention to your daily habits and just remember nothing has the ability to control you unless you allow it to. We all go through ups and downs and journeys, but you are the sole decider about who you are and what your journey is. Nothing else has the ability to have power over you unless you allow it.
Oh my God, I love that. Such an impactful way to end the podcast. Thank you so much, David. You're amazing.
Thanks,
I love
Tess.
you. Thanks so much for listening. If you loved the episode, please subscribe, rate, and review. It honestly means so much and helps to keep these conversations going. And I'd love to connect with you. You can message me on Instagram or TikTok, and I've left all the details from the episode in the show notes below. I'll see you next week.